All right there, everyone. There's a mass political paradigm shift going on in Denmark as even the left-wing Social Democrats have embraced a pro-border security, anti-immigration policy. That's what we'll be talking about on today's video. And if you stick with me to the end, I've got something that's just going to make your day. It's delicious. I want to give a huge shout out to one of our subscribers, David Eggers from Copenhagen, who brought this to my attention. Very, very much appreciated, David. Thank you very much for this. Many of you may not know, but Denmark has recently become perhaps the single most dedicated nation to border security in Western Europe, bar none. And this was brought home with a recent report published by a so-called human rights NGO, a non-governmental organization, which issued a highly critical report on asylum and immigration practices in Denmark. Indeed, very similar to what we're seeing right now being reported on in the States. How coincidental, right? With all these families being separated at the border. It may even be the same organization, I'm not sure, reporting on this. This NGO accuses Denmark of prison-like asylum centers and possible detainment of children in unsuitable facilities. The report was released a couple of weeks back by an organization called the Global Detention Project. And if you go to their website, guess who is the #1 featured funding source of this so-called human rights NGO? Did you guess George Soros and the Open Society Foundations? Well, you would have guessed right. This is a Soros-funded report. But of course, you'll never hear that from the corporatist, globalist, mainstream media. They'll just ever so willingly echo the report's findings and completely hide from you who it is that's making these accusations. Somebody who wants open borders all throughout Europe and who funds every single left-wing radical cause you can think of. Nevertheless, the report is actually very informative and perhaps in a very, very disappointing way for Soros. The report notes that over the past 3 years, since the refugee crisis in 2015, Denmark has adopted, get this, it's adopted just under 70 immigration-related amendments, all of which have radically intensified border security and immigration restrictions. 70 amendments. They've cut back dramatically on their asylum recognition rate, and they've called for detaining as many failed refugees as possible. And as a result, Denmark's rate of acceptance of asylum applications has plunged from 85% in 2015 to barely over 30% in 2017. It's getting even more restrictive as we speak. And that is because Denmark's political parties, both traditionally left and traditionally right, they're all vying to demonstrate to their voters that they are more conservative on border security than anyone else. Border security and immigration are no longer a left or right wing issue. They have now officially and formally become pre-political. Every party is declaring the necessity of border security. And now it's just a matter of who's going to do it more effectively. That, my friends, is what we call here a political paradigm shift, where a once marginal or peripheral political policy or party moves from the margins to the mainstream. It moves from the political fringe, as it were, to now becoming the consensus opinion among the population. And when it comes to the border security of its nation, Denmark has rejected the globalist vision of the European Union and its open borders, and instead has shifted en masse to the nationalist populist right. Now, I'm sure many of you are familiar with the so-called far-right Danish People's Party, the Dansk Folkeparti, the DF. They're the second most popular party in Denmark and at the center of the right-wing coalition there. They are one of the most successful right-wing parties in Europe. They've been able to really shape domestic policy in Denmark, which of course includes a very, very strict border security policy. But their success has gone beyond, I think, anything any of us could have ever have imagined up to just a few years ago. Reports are coming out now that even the traditionally left-wing parties are turning towards the right when it comes to immigration. Here's a relatively recent headline from Bloomberg. Danish leftists turn on migrants in bid to regain power. And what they're talking about is the Social Democrats in Denmark have already declared that they will not form a coalition with any other leftist party in Denmark. The Social Democrats are traditionally the center-left party. They're currently the largest single party in the Danish parliament, but the right-wing coalition holds the overall majority. And for the past 25 years, they've caucused with other left-wing parties in Denmark. Naturally, of course, that's the right and left paradigm, but no longer. And guess what the key issue of contention is with their fellow leftists? Did you say immigration? Ding, 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 you're a winner. You see, the whole issue of traditional left and traditional right is blurring. In many ways, it's collapsing. It's falling apart. It's no longer an issue of whether we're going to raise taxes by a certain percentage point or lower taxes by a comparable percentage point. It's no longer about whether the government is going to provide welfare services or whether we're going to privatize such agencies. The traditional policies of left and right are frankly over. And what's replacing them is now a paradigmatic debate over whether we're going to embrace globalism or nationalism. Are we going to have open borders, or are we going to secure our borders? Are we going to be a multicultural society, or are we going to embrace our cultural, traditional, and religious uniqueness and identity? This is the new politics. This is the new political paradigm. And guess who's winning? Guess which side is coming out on top almost everywhere we look around the globe. Did you guess the nationalist, populist, and traditionalist side? Well, ding, 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 you win again. Isn't this great? We're winning, 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 right? As someone in the States likes to say. We're winning, winning, winning precisely because the politics of the future are centered around the three broad insecurities that left-wing globalization has inflicted on our populations: border insecurity, economic insecurity, and cultural insecurity. It's these three insecurities that globalization inflicts on populations all over the world that are redefining politics in a thoroughly nationalist, populist, and traditionalist direction. And Denmark and the other Nordic nations are no exception. Indeed, if anything, Denmark in many respects is leading the way. Now, for a little something juicy that I promised you, you're going to love this. Just so ironic. What's so fascinating here, what's so significant about this mass paradigm shift is that this is not a shift that's happening in an otherwise already conservative part of Europe, like Central Europe, Eastern Europe. This mass paradigm shift to the right in terms of nationalist, populist-inspired border security is happening in a nation, you ready for this? It's happening in a nation that was once the globalist liberal ideal of the Democratic Party of the United States. The Washington Compost reported back in 2015 that Denmark was the single most cited model nation among the then Democratic primary candidates for president. It was the most cited nation as the ideal for liberal democratic policies, and that Denmark was famous, of course, for providing the most generous benefits for their citizens in terms of affordable education, universal health care, subsidized child care, and the like. And no presidential candidate cited the example of Denmark more than one Bernie Sanders. He often stated that his vision of democratic socialism was best exemplified by countries like Denmark. Well, that was 2015, before the refugee crisis that swamped Europe. I wonder how many of these Democrats, how many of them feel about what they feel about Denmark now. Denmark has begun to make even Donald Trump look liberal when it comes to border security. And so I think that perhaps for the first time we can all agree with these secular liberal globalist Democrats. Denmark truly is a model nation. As always, please like, comment, and subscribe. Click on our Patreon link below. Become a monthly supporter of this channel and help us to continue to analyze current events in light of awesome conservative trends so that you can personally and professionally flourish. God bless.